Hi, everybody. This is Richard Bolger. Before we get to the subject matter of the podcast you're interested in, let me tell you I have used a product developed by Anchor to develop my podcast. It's free. They provide tools that allow you to record and edit your own podcast right from your own computer. And thankfully, they will distribute the podcast for you at no cost. So I recommend the product highly. And now let's get to the podcast. Hi, this is Richard Bolger. I am going to talk today about, the question, do I make too much money to file bankruptcy? But before I do, I must do two things. Housekeeping items. I have to read a disclaimer and a required notice. So my disclaimer is that what I tell people in podcasts is general in nature. And how my advice would apply in a specific case is difficult to ascertain oftentimes by listening to podcasts. But I'm just trying to give general information to the public so that they can become more informed on how bankruptcy might apply to them. And bankruptcy, realize, is a federal law, and it is the same law in all 50 states and territories, I believe, like Puerto Rico, whatever. And yet there are variances from state to state as to how a person's property is dealt with in a bankruptcy case. So a lot of my focus is in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, mainly Virginia. I do some Maryland and D.C. cases as well. Finally, my firm is a debt relief agency, and we do help people file for relief under the bankruptcy code. So, do I make too much money to file bankruptcy? People do wonder that sometimes. Do I have to be destitute and unemployed and living under a bridge or what have you? The answer is no. No. The question is really not just about how much you earn, but how much you're spending, isn't it? Um, many high income people just have extravagant spending, and it exceeds their ability to pay their debts eventually one day. So they can need to file for bankruptcy protection as well. When you consider filing a bankruptcy petition, when a lawyer looks at a client, for example, and looks at the income, you have an analysis which basically would determine what you might be eligible for. Okay, there's more than one chapter of the Bankruptcy Code. There's chapters 7, 11, 12, and 13. For most all individuals, it's either chapter 7 or 13. And chapter 7 is the most complete relief, quickest discharge, and quicker to help you rebuild your credit than chapter 13. A typical chapter 7 case can be over in perhaps 4 months, whereas a chapter 13 case can go on for 5 years. So I mention that because you don't make too much money to file bankruptcy. That is the answer. The answer is no, you do not make too much money to file for bankruptcy. The question is, what chapter would you be eligible for? Well, chapter 7, as I said, has some benefits to it. And you'd like to qualify for chapter 7 if you can. Now, that is where your income could be too high to qualify for that chapter, because you have to pass what's called the means test. Okay, in 2005, I believe it was, Congress instituted a means test in the Bankruptcy Code, which said that if you are above median income for the geographical area in which you live, then you must take the means test to see if you're eligible for Chapter 7. If you're below the median income, then you would presumably pass the means test and qualify for Chapter 7. It's not hard to exceed the median income in the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. Yet many of those people do file for bankruptcy protection. And how is that so? Well, they pass the means test. Now, before I get to the means test, let me just say this. There are certain exemptions from taking the means test. So, if, for example, over half of your debt that you incurred is debt which was incurred in business, not consumer debt, it was business debt, then you can be exempt from the means test. So you could have high income, but your debt is over half incurred in the pursuit of business ventures, so you don't have to take the means test. Or you could be perhaps a disabled veteran, has certain exemptions, and so does, I believe it is a person who has incurred debt in the defense of the homeland. While in defense of the homeland, their debt was incurred while they were working in defense of the homeland. That is yet another exemption. But if you don't qualify for one of those exemptions, then you are taking the means test if your income is above the median income. The median income for your geographical area is determined by an IRS guideline. So if you have above median income and you're taking the means test, the most common way in which a person passes the means test really is by having secured debt obligations. So by that, I mean, maybe you have a mortgage payment and the mortgage payment is high. That is an item which can be deducted from your monthly income. The means test is somewhat like a tax return in a way. You start with gross monthly income and you subtract from it certain allowed items to come to your disposable monthly income. And if that's meets a certain guideline, then you can pass the means test. And the most common way in which my clients who are above median income manage to qualify for Chapter 7 is if they have a mortgage and the mortgage is significant enough to, when subtracted from the monthly income, it's significant enough to enable the debtor to pass the means test. Other secured debt obligations to add in there are car payments, typical. And of course, your tax obligations are subtracted from your gross monthly income, as well as other items like your health insurance premiums, so life insurance that you pay for, but not just any expense, okay? They're only allowed itemized expenses that are contained in the bankruptcy code. So if you do have above median income, to sum up, if you do have above median income, you can still file for a Chapter 7 bankruptcy if you're able to pass the means test. If after all the analysis is done, you still are not passing the means test, you then could file a Chapter 13 bankruptcy case in all likelihood. So in all likelihood, the answer to the question is, do I make too much money to file for bankruptcy? No. In all likelihood, the answer is actually what chapter of the bankruptcy code you qualify for. It's great if you can qualify for Chapter 7 because of the quicker relief, less expensive process. But if not, Chapter 13 is available. Chapter 13 is a repayment plan, which is based upon your ability to repay as much as it is on the amount of debt you have. It's like a debt consolidation plan, really. Private debt consolidation plans are really basically put together based upon how much debt you have. And You have to pay a certain percent, whether it's feasible or not. In bankruptcy, if the plan is not feasible, if you don't have the income to support the plan, it will never even be approved and the case won't get off the ground. So you really have to show in that Chapter 13 case that you can make the payments. And it is a great remedy for people who are not able to pass the Chapter 7 means tests, yet still need the protection of the bankruptcy code. Perhaps they fell behind in their home mortgage. It's a very typical reason why people file Chapter 13. And Chapter 13, you're able to take the amount of money you fell behind in your home mortgage and divide it by 60, essentially, and repay it over the next 5 years at 0% interest. So that's it in a nutshell, as far as answering the question of, do I make too much money to file bankruptcy? Have a great day.